Well, we're asked the question at the beginning, what gives your life meaning? And that is a pretty important question. I think probably all agree that's one of the kind of fundamental questions of life. Because the whole of our lives are built on questions of, or on stories and narratives of things that tell us who we are and what our purpose in the world is, what life is about, and that connect us to something bigger than us. Questions like, what is my goal? What is my purpose? What is my ambition? What am I aiming for? Maybe you're here for university. You think, my goal here is to get a degree. Or my goal here is to meet somebody. Or I'm here to be a success. I'm in the world to help people, maybe, to do something significant, to do something that lasts, something meaningful. All of us have these kind of little narratives that say what we're here for. And as humans, we have this need to believe that our lives have meaning and have purpose. That our lives have some kind of coherence, some kind of connection to something that's bigger than us. A reason for our lives, a meaning. Now, experience this in different ways. You can experience this in little ways, like little kind of snatches in life. So, let's say you're listening to your favorite music, whatever it is, and there might be a moment where something clicks in the music and you feel that you're just being, I don't know, there's something right about it. There's something that just kind of picks you up and carries you and makes you think there's something real, something kind of true here, and you feel like you're connected to it for a moment. Or that might be like, I don't know, in a play or in a movie or in something else. Just gives you a moment of being connected to something. Or it might be just in your life as you go through whatever you're doing. There'll be moments where you feel like now is the right moment. I'm in the right place at the right time. There's a rightness about it. There's a meaning and purpose in what I'm doing here. On the flip side, you might have experienced what it's like to feel like you haven't got meaning in your life. And that is a dreadful, terrible place to be. As humans, we need meaning. It drives us. It protects us. I was reading an article on Psychology Today this last week, which called the act of suicide a breakdown in our meaning systems. When we feel like we don't have meaning, life has no meaning. It has no purpose. There's no impetus for life. We need a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in our lives. Now, if you've been here for the last few weeks, that might start sounding like bad news. Because we've been looking at what I guess many people in the West particularly believe today, which flows from the idea that there is no God. And that is that there is no meaning. If you follow through and say there is no God and that all there is the kind of physical world around us, then that means that nothing has significance in itself. Nothing means anything. And I could bring out loads of quotes from philosophers or new atheists or whatever saying that your life really has no meaning in and of itself. There's no meaning in this world to be discovered. And so we're in a tricky place. I was a bit of a mythology geek when I was growing up. And there's a myth of Sisyphus. Some of you might know it. It's this guy who is condemned to roll a boulder up this hill, a really heavy boulder, push it all the way up the hill, and then it rolls back down again. And he has to walk back down and push the boulder back up, and that's it. Carrying on and on and on and on for all eternity. To do something pointless. Condemned to do something that's never going to work. And the philosopher Albert Camus said, that's us. Condemned to look for meaning in a world where there isn't any. A world that refuses to give us any meaning. And you're probably here thinking, well, yeah, but I've got this little piece of card and I wrote something on it. My life does have meaning. And the fact that we're all here and we're not, I trust, for many of us, we're not despairing of life means that we do have meaning in our lives. And the question is, how did that happen? How did we get there if we live in a culture that says there is no ultimate meaning? Well, got some, I think, in diagrams, forgive me, but these might be helpful. This is kind of the traditional belief system of traditional cultures, the idea of discovered meaning, that there is meaning in the world, and you go and discover it, you find it. And there is meaning because there is an ultimate meaning. It might be God, I guess in kind of typical religion, there'd be God, and God gives meaning to other things by creating them. So you've got leisure, family, ambition, me, myself, my work. Those things have meaning because there is a God. I discover meaning in life. Because I find out that there is a God and I get to know him. That's how I know meaning. But if you say there is no God, what happens? Suddenly those things don't have their own meaning. It's not just that there's no central meaning, it's that these things that got their meaning from God, where is their meaning anymore? And so what we did over the last couple of hundred years in the West, we said, well, we need meaning, and so what we will do is we will create meaning. Things will have meaning because I say they have meaning. I will choose the meaning. Instead of discovering meaning, I will create meaning in my life. What does that mean? So, a little bit like Kung Fu Panda. So I've forgotten his name, the Panda. Let's call him the Panda. He has to discover the Dragon Scroll, which is going to give him this amazing superpower to defeat evil or whatever. And he goes on this quest to discover the Dragon Scroll, and he gets the Dragon Scroll, he opens the Dragon Scroll, and there's nothing on the Dragon Scroll. There's no ultimate meaning. What's the answer? Find it in yourself. Create the meaning. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy may be a similar thing. What's the meaning of the life, the universe, and everything? 42. There is no meaning. It's meaningless. Create your own meaning. Make it yourself. Say I have a brother or a sister who I'm really close to. They're just a biological accident. But I assign meaning to that. I say that relationship has meaning in my life. That has purpose. My wife, who's actually here this evening, that, our relationship, the love we feel for one another, it's just chemicals. It's just genes. It's just random. But I decide that the universe spins around my wife and the relationship that we have. I assign meaning to it. My drive to succeed, to be, whether it's rich or famous or to help people, it's just an evolutionary twitch. But I call it ambition and following my dreams and self-realization. And I say that has meaning. And you might say, well, that's all fine. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the idea that I create my own meaning. I don't need a God to give me meaning. I've got meaning. I just want to take a look at that for a couple of minutes. That idea of created meaning. Firstly, created meaning is fragile. Because the things we invest with meaning are temporary and beyond our control. There's a song that I know that you almost certainly won't know, very niche artist. It's written from the perspective of a mother whose son was swept out to sea and died. And it opens with the words, "It's all gone. All is empty, without worth." See how something that's so precious has been invested with meaning has been taken away, and now there is no meaning. And the chorus goes, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do to see you through this fragile world. It's acknowledging that when we invest meaning in things, when we say what is meaningful, and there is no ultimate meaning, meaning is fragile. Created meaning is vulnerable, because the things that we find meaning in are temporary and beyond our control. If meaning is about relationships, then that meaning is bounded by the faithfulness of your partner. If meaning is in popularity, then your meaning is bounded by your likability. If meaning is about attractiveness and body image, then it's bounded by age and time. If meaning is about success, then it's determined by how good all the other people are, and whether you had a cold when you took the exam, and whether your kid was up sick the night before you had the interview. If meaning is about family ties, then it's dependent on a million things you cannot control, and ultimately bounded by disease and death. It's fragile. And even if you have multiple layers to your meaning, even if you have things you can fall back on, then one day, when you're not there anymore, they won't mean anything anymore. Do you see how it's fragile, created meaning? And sometimes you see people with all those layers of meaning stripped away and they lose their minds. Created meaning is fragile. Secondly, created meaning is unreal. This is a bit less heavy, but it's important. Created meaning doesn't have its own existence. It's just things have meaning because I say they have meaning. And you might say, well, that's okay. If that makes life bearable, that's fine. Imagine you had a friend, and that friend was absolutely besotted with his wife. Absolutely crazy about her. His whole life was wrapped up in her and always talked about it. He was so happy because of her. And then you find out that she's cheating on him. Should you tell him? Knowing it would destroy him, knowing it would take away all his happiness, should you tell him? His happiness is a lie. His whole meaning in life is false. Should you tell him? Or let's take it a step further. Say she doesn't exist. She's imaginary. Should you tell him? So we have this sense that meaning in life should be connected to reality. And the idea of having real meaning without ultimate meaning at the center of it is that. Someone's called it the noble lie that we tell ourselves. Stories that we tell to give significance to our lives. And in case you think I'm caricaturing from a Christian perspective, Camus, the guy I mentioned earlier, he asked this question. He said, how can I make sense? On the one hand, I want meaning. I want there to be real meaning in life. On the other hand, I know there isn't. So what can I do about that? And he said, I think I've got a quote here. He said, if I listen to the voice of irony, crouching underneath things like a frog or toad or something, slowly it reveals itself. Winking its small, clear eye, it says, live as if. In spite of much searching, this is all I know. Live as if. You know it's not true. You know it's not reality. Live as if. So for the person for whom there is no ultimate meaning, there's no God, when you feel like there's no meaning, when you feel empty, when you feel disillusioned, the answer is be less rational. Detach yourself further from reality. Live as if. Now I want to look at the passage that we were looking at earlier and just see what that has to say. Is there anything better? Is there anything different that Christianity can say to this? The idea of not creating meaning but discovering meaning. I just want to read a few of those verses again, if you've got that open in front of you. If you haven't, don't worry. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. Jesus is speaking there to two women whose lives have fallen apart. So two women, their brother Lazarus, two sisters and their brother. The brother has died. Now in that society, that leaves them vulnerable. They're completely dependent on him as a man. They now have no protection, they have no children, they have really no way of continuing living without the mercy of other people. But more than that, just the three of them, a close-knit group, and now the relationship that defined them, there was a huge part of their meaning system, has gone. Their world has just fallen apart. And as we saw when it was read earlier, Jesus comes in, he does something incredible. He comes and he takes Lazarus and he raises him and gives him back to them. But that's not actually what I want to focus on here. Because Jesus says something about what it means to have, when Jesus comes into your life, when you're connected to him, about meaning and the kind of meaning that we can have. And firstly, well, 2 points. The first one is this. So same questions as we were applying to created meaning. Is it real? This meaning that Jesus brings is reality itself. I think it's in verse 27. Jesus is called the Messiah or the Christ. If you've seen the Lego movie, who's seen the Lego movie? People also The Special. The most interesting whatever, I can't remember the line. The person everyone's waiting for to come and fix everything. Like the one in the Matrix. The idea that there is somebody who we're waiting for to come in from the outside, to come and fix us, to fix the world, to sort it all out. They're waiting for this person. Someone who transcends the world because they're from outside the world. Someone who is more real than the world because they were there before the world. An ultimate reality. Who's coming in? Jesus says, that's me. He is the person outside who is bigger, who transcends it, who gives it meaning, who comes into it. And if you saw, there were several references in that passage to not him just coming, but to him being sent. Verse 42, he says that they might know that you sent me. Meaning isn't just there to be discovered. Jesus says meaning is in the world because he came into the world. He was sent into the world. Meaning came to find us, says the Christian. Meaning isn't just to be discovered. Meaning is looking for you. And if there's an ultimate meaning in the world, if there's that kind of ultimate center, then that gives us an ultimate purpose. See what Jesus says? He says, verse 40, did not tell you that you would see my Father's glory. I think it's verse 42 again. That they might know that you sent me. In this passage and all the way through John's Gospel, Jesus isn't just wanting to do something impressive. He is wanting to show who he is and that God has sent him. Not just that he is the ultimate reality, but that you can be connected to him. That there is a purpose in the world, and that is to know the ultimate reality. To be connected to that ultimate reality because it has come into the world. In flesh and in blood. To be known, to be seen, to be touched, to be experienced. The Christian meaning is reality itself. Not something we create. Ultimate reality. Secondly, is it durable? Is it fragile? The reality Jesus gives is death-proof. What Jesus does is amazing. It's incredible. He brings a guy back from the dead. Like, there's nobody like Jesus. He does it by speaking. He doesn't even touch him. His words are so powerful that he brings life. But look at what he says. In the verse I just read again, he says, I am the resurrection and the life. He doesn't just say, I can bring life. He doesn't just say, I'm the resurrector. He says, I am the resurrection. I am the origin of life. I am so full of life that if you try to kill me, death itself will die. He is the resurrection. He is the least fragile, the most durable. And so the meaning that he gives is death-proof. What does this mean for us? If you're here as a Christian, sometimes you feel that life has no meaning, or not enough meaning. We do feel that sometimes, right? If we're honest. We feel dissatisfied, disillusioned. We feel that I thought there'd be more than this. Or I feel like my life is just purposeless. I'm just wandering, it's aimless. For you, when you're in that place, the answer is not to be less rational. It is not to disconnect yourself and go and believe something that isn't true. It is to be more rational. It is to connect yourself with ultimate reality. It's not like I'm in the middle and Jesus is an empty box over here that I need to fill up with meaning and desperately make him meaningful. I am the empty box. He is the one who is full of meaning. So when I feel empty of meaning, I need to turn to him so that he fills me and not the other way around. He is the source of meaning, the source of life. So we will experience meaning and purpose in our lives to the precise extent that we see the glory of Jesus and make it our life's aim to know him. And maybe for you to get today, that means you've got other things competing to be meaningful in your life. To make meaning about your degree, to make meaning about your family, about a relationship, about your prospects, whatever it might be. And this means saying no to those things. Not they don't have meaning, they do have meaning, but they only find their meaning from Jesus, when he is the ultimate meaning. If you're here and you wouldn't say you're a Christian, what does this mean? It means that there's a possibility of a meaning in your life that is not bounded by anything. That is not bounded by age, it's not bounded by circumstances, it's not bounded by disease, it's not even bounded by death. A meaning that you never have to transfer, that never runs out, that never grows thin, that there is always more and more and more of for you to know, and a meaning you can touch and experience that starts now. And what Jesus does, raising Lazarus, it is a sign. It's pointing forwards to a future resurrection. And Jesus is saying, there is the possibility of life, of participating in my life. That ultimate meaning of knowing him and living with him, sharing his life forever. A meaning that never runs out, that is death-proof. Now I need to finish there. We've got several questions that we're going to think about on our tables. I'll hand over to Gordon in a minute to guide us through that. But let me pray. I'll take a moment of quiet for that to settle, maybe in your minds. Maybe think of a question that you'd like to ask on your tables. Maybe think of something that you'd like to say to God in the quietness of your own heart.